This is the Reimagining Work podcast, episode 1, with John Wenger and Roger Noord. This is our very first episode. We're going to spend the time on this episode to introduce ourselves and the podcast and answer a few questions, as in why. Well, mainly that's just one question, right? I think we might want to start with the title instead of our personal bios. Don't you think it's a good idea, John?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
So we have the title after numerous debates, meetings, and brainstorm sessions, or the way we did it in like 15 minutes, we came up with Reimagining Work. Well, John, why Reimagining Work?
Well, from a very silly point of view, lots of other good names were taken. But actually, we thought Reimagining Work, it describes really well the overarching theme of the podcasts. You and I have set out some ideas of topics that we would like to cover out of our personal and professional interests. And there's this idea that I don't think is just your idea and my idea, or that we're not the only ones who go along with it, is that the way that work happens for people is increasingly unsatisfying, is increasingly less effective, and there's a new way of working that I think we are part of a movement to generating. There's a picture that is beginning to form, I think, in lots of people's minds about how work could be better, how work could be different, how work could feel more purposeful, how work could be more meaningful for people.
Yes. Sorry. There are many different ways in which that can be achieved.
That's right.
In an interpersonal way, digital way.
That's right.
From management down or from the bottom up. There's just like numerous ideas and concepts all over the place. And we didn't want a title of the podcast that was too restrictive to a specific topic or a specific train of thought, because obviously we do not know everything. Our backgrounds are different, and but we seem to be traveling the same path. And we like to have the openness of the continuation of a philosophy about the future of work. And hence reimagining work, because it's something that you can keep doing and keep going on, and because what you think of for tomorrow might not be as effective as you thought it would be, and then you can change it again. And so we don't want to stick with one specific concept or trajectory, because there's just so much we can do.
I think what that last point you just made about how when you come up with a new idea, you'll always find another new idea that kind of comes out of it. That it's not about coming up with one definite thing, which is going to be congruent with how the podcasts unfold. So we're going to be doing some things and trying some things, and we don't presume to have answers. And I think that's the exciting thing about this, is we're going to be doing this in conversation, which I think is probably core to how the new way of working is going to happen, is people having conversations. And it's interesting how you and I met. We do have very different backgrounds, I think, but we have something in common, which is we want to reimagine how work happens for people and ourselves. And there's loads about your background and experience and your knowledge and how you see things might emerge that I have no idea about, and I'm going to be interested to find out when we have these conversations, the pictures that you're beginning to create. And similarly, there'll be things that you don't know about, what is it exactly I do and how I work with people, but we have that thing in common. For people who are listening and who don't know us, we met in Paris in February this year. And it was wonderful for me walking into a room of people who I knew had a range of experiences that I would have no idea about, and a range of ideas and practices in their work. But I knew that I was in a room with my people, that we were all here to do something that was about creating a world where work was meaningful and satisfying, and it was done in a way where people were treated more as humans than as just resources.
This is maybe the most significant thing, element of the future of work. It's just one of those terms that got stuck in your head. But about social business and the people who are involved with it. Social business, being a social business advocate, somebody who strives for selling the idea or convincing people of the philosophy, and just in general talking to anybody who wants to listen, is you have to believe in it, and
That's right.
you have to want that, and you have to be passionate about it. And the most of the people I've met who are active in social business focus so much on the term social, and not necessarily in the way they do their work or as just a key concept of being successful in social business, but being social, actually living the change that you want to achieve. And this for me was like one of the biggest things that I encountered when I went to the Enterprise 2.0 Summit, to the first one in 2013. People were so open, so enthusiastic, and so friendly. It was the first seminar or the first conference that I went to, where I had such a unified experience with everybody there, and that was an eye-opener. And that made me feel that this is one of those movements that can actually make a difference, that can actually happen, because people really are passionate about it, and it's not just about the bottom line and making more money. So we met in Paris. We had a great time, talked a lot, and continued that relationship after Paris, and slowly but surely this podcast was maybe an inevitability, and something that we had to do. Yes,
I think it was inspired of you to suggest that we do it, because we've been having chats, just you and I, and again, to come back to the idea of reimagining work, that it's not just going to be about what you and I do, but it's inviting conversation. So I think part of the picture we've got is that as we do the podcast, we'll invite other people to join in the conversation. Yes. And so there's also a Twitter account, so we're going to invite people to engage there. There's a Facebook page, so we're going to invite people to engage there, because I was brought to mind of a TED talk by Benjamin Bratton, who is he's in California. He's the associate professor of visual arts at the University of California in San Diego, and he did a wonderful, inspiring TED talk called "What's Wrong with TED Talks?" And one of the points that it's very, very worth watching. One of the points that he made was we sometimes look at the intractable problems facing us in our world and our society as puzzles. And he said, but the point is that they're not puzzles, because if they were puzzles, we'd have all the pieces in front of us, and it would just be about rearranging them in a way that made a better picture. He said that the thing about some of the things that are facing us now, particularly with, say, work, we're reimagining work, is we don't have all the pieces in front of us.
No.
And from my perspective, we're going to come up with some of the new solutions by having conversation, by being social with each other. We'll come up with what the world of social business looks like by having conversations with each other, and come up with solutions that I couldn't come up with myself and you couldn't come up with yourself. And it's not about having me sitting here by myself trying to create some new models of leadership, say, or models of teamwork, and then saying, please buy my product, please vote for me, I've got the answer. And I think that's the old way of looking at work. The new way is going, I don't have the answer, but I know the sort of thing, I know it when I'll see it, and I'd like to create that, I'd like to co-create that with you. So that's why we're going to have people joining us, and we encourage people to engage with us on reimagining work. So, and we really are reimagining work, and I would like to think that we don't come across as the ones who've got the answers. And we may be very passionate about some of the things that we do in our work and some of the things we believe.
And we might have very, very strong opinions about...
And I think we will.
Yeah.
But I think I'd like just to kind of underline that footnote in big bold with yellow highlighter, that we don't have the answers, and if it comes across as that presumption, it's not intended. I'm excited about the conversations that might unfold between you and I and the other people that we invite and the other people that engage with us on social media. So that's some of the reasoning behind the Reimagining Work title. Apart from the fact that all the other good names were taken, it's actually a bloody good name.
It's actually a bloody good name, and that kind of it's a nice bridge to the topics that we want to talk about. We covered a few. We name social business. We name the future of work, but these are still very broad topics. I like to add some keywords. We're going to talk about communities. How to build them, or what kind of influence they have on a company, or how you can get active in one. We know people who are very good in the field of community growth, and might ask them how to do it, because, like John said, we don't have all the answers, and we are here to learn, and more to learn than to teach, actually, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's just create that vessel. So, yeah, the topics are broad. Anything related to the way to work, and maybe this is a nice bridge to, because for me, I mean, if you're talking about a podcast, and we're going to have our social media channels up and running, and a website, and everything is going to be there, obviously, because you have to. And that's okay, and but with that you have kind of all the technical stuff covered, right? The Enterprise 2.0, the digital, the platforms that we use. Sure, these things are all important. I have an IT background, so I'm very interested in the technology behind all this. But you, John, you are a people person. I was going to say socialist, but that's not it. It's help me out.
Yeah. I think my area is more on the people side of the future of work and reimagining work, on the interrelationships between people, on developing. My interest in developing intrapersonal intelligence and interpersonal intelligence, with the two of which are inextricably linked. When you use a word like wiki, my eyes glaze over and I go, I haven't a clue what you're talking about. I've heard the word, but all the technical side of stuff is beyond me, and it's just about the path that I've chosen in my life. And you can't have one without the other. You can't have the technical side of these sorts of things. I'm not what you'd call an early adopter. But when I jump in, like when I jumped into Twitter several years ago, I give it a really good go, and I really want to try and work out how these things work, because I see them as exactly what they are: media. They are mediators between people. They are tools that we can use to connect more of us up, so that we can have the good, satisfying interpersonal relationships that I think are really going to be more significant in the future of work, wherever that work may be. And my mind has just now gone to some work that I did years ago with some folks who worked on a factory floor. One of the most hilarious, fun, and rewarding pieces of work I did. And that was what they were doing was developing themselves towards being a more social business, because the relationships between the people on the factory floor absolutely influenced what the business was creating, and actually gave people meaning in work. Not just the product they were producing, but the relationships that they had, the kind of robust conversations that they learned how to have with each other. So I'd be on the people side of things. And if you say something technical, I'm going to say, sorry, what's that? And I think people who are the people side of things, like me, who listen, may appreciate when I say, what's a wiki?
Yeah, and I'll try to explain it if I know. obviously I don't claim to know everything, but I am an early adopter. Maybe that translates in me trying out a lot of stuff and sticking to very little. But then again, most of it is not worth sticking to, so we drop that.
Yeah.
I do think that one of the reasons a podcast like this is possible is because the convergence of the technology and the human aspect of the thing, where people are finally developing in a way where they go like, well, my 9-to-5 job, the way I do it now, it can be everything. There has to be more.
That's right.
And there is, for a lot of people anyway. And but now we have the technology to support
That's right.
the ideas that people have, or the path that they want to go, or whatever they can come up with. There's technology to support it, and I think that's the beauty of the time that we're living in. And I think that's going to be like the red thread through the podcast. It is that convergence where technology and humanity finally meet up and is able to create a working environment where we actually just looking forward to going to work.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think
I had a couple other ideas. Thoughts I had about the title Reimagining work as well. I quite like how we've settled on the verb reimagining, ing, which for me as an ex-English teacher from a previous life, long time ago, it gives it a sense of something happening, some movement, some action. That it's an unfolding and emergent sort of thing. It's not the reimagined work, but it's the podcasts and the conversations are an ongoing, unfolding, emergent design sort of thing. And I like the fact that we chose reimagining work as an active verb.
There's a fair chance that we'll be having this podcast in a couple of years' time, and it still be relevant, and we'd still find subjects to talk about, and we'd still find new guests to invite over, because there's continuously new people coming to the scene and popping up and having all sorts of very smart things to say and to share with us. Our goal is to find as many of those people that we can and get them on board and learn as much as we can from them, grill them, and extract every ounce of knowledge that they have in their brain, and leave them with it when we're done with them. No, that's not that bad. We're not
No. Oh, you mean you're talking about them as resources again, aren't you?
Yeah. That are human resource.
Yeah. We're
going to give them a number, and then I'm going to be a name, and then
that's right.
we're going to have a list of questions, not a conversation.
No, that's right. That's right.
We're going to have a questionnaire to fill out, and then we're going to analyze the big data and take it from there. Right. So yeah, this is the Reimagining podcast. We'll also probably we're going to do it we keep doing it in the Google Hangouts, which means that in the future they're going to be, well, they are live now. It's just that nobody knows about it yet. But if we're going to use this technology in the future, then it's going to be a live podcast, which makes things very much more interesting, and but also viewable for anybody who wants to view it live.
Yes, that's right.
Maybe can cut in with a question here or there, if so inclined. For now, as far as technology goes, our evolution is also something that's going to grow with the size of the podcast. For now, we're just using our not so expensive microphones and using the technology that's readily available to us, hence a Google Hangout. In the future, we'll be changing up, gearing up, getting more experience, having better equipment, and well, basically, the sky's the limit. Who knows where it'll end?
And maybe one day,
and
hopefully in September, we'll be able to do this podcast in the same room together. That would be exciting.
Actually, it's going to be November.
Oh, November. Okay.
It's been postponed.
This year. Okay.
But it is this year. It's going to be the 25th, 25th, 26th, 25th, 26th of November. And I'm betting that we're going to do a hangout live during the conference. So that's. I mean, we can have like maybe 8 or 10 or whatever. How many? Yeah, about that. Podcasts under our belt by the time we get to the conference. And I know people, so that's okay.
And I know some people that I'd want to involve in the conversation too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll do a couple of interviews or whatever. Maybe we'll see. The future is unwritten, and we can only imagine what's going to happen.
Yes.
And that's it for me.
And that's exciting. That's exciting. So we've said something about the name and the mostly blank canvas that we'll be filling in as we go. Maybe we should say something about ourselves.
We haven't done that.
No. We've just hinted at some things, that we come from different backgrounds. And
so, age before beauty?
Well, then who goes first?
I'm hoping you're a little bit older than I am.
Yeah. I'm 49.
Then you are a little bit older than I am.
Okay, so then that means I go first. Well, as you've already introduced a little bit of what I do. I take the people side of stuff. My business is called Quantum Shift, and I'm based in London and very mobile. And I started Quantum Shift just over 10 years ago in New Zealand with Aroha Nui Grace, who is my business partner there. And the two of us were both training in a method developed by Jacob Moreno, and took a particular interest in sociodrama and role training out of that method. And we decided that there was a place for this stuff in workplaces. And my work now has come to the point where basically I do leader and team development, but it's a rather unconventional thing because I do use experiential action methods. I use sociodrama and role training. It's very much about developing better sociometry between people that I work with, and sociometry is a term that Jacob coined back in the 1920s or 30s, I forget exactly when, but back in the early part of the 20th century. Sociometry is a word that literally means measure of social relationships or connections between people. And in some of his early work, he set out some very dull and complicated and complex diagrams of measures of social relationships. One of the great-great-grandchildren of sociometry is something that I think a lot of people might be familiar with, is social network analysis. They are different things, but sociometry was developed so that people would develop capabilities to relate better with each other. And one of the themes, I suppose, of sociometry, one of the teachings of sociometry is that the quality of an outcome is directly related to the quality of relationships between people who are trying to generate that outcome. Therefore, if you have better relationships, what you try and do together will be more productive, more satisfying, more life-giving.
And that's a very fundamental subject that you're touching here, because everything that we're going to talk about in the future starts and ends with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't matter what kind of technology you have, or what kind of hierarchies you have, or philosophies you have, or processes you have or anything like that. It all begins with people and how they react to each other, how they react in a community, and how their relationship is. So it's very fundamental.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And certainly the future of work is going to be more about relationships between people. It's going to be more about the connections, the networks that people grow with themselves, between each other. One of the other things that sociometry teaches us is that there is more that we have in common than that separates us. And so the work, when I'm going in working with people, my intense fascination and curiosity with people is helping them to discover what are the things that they actually have in common that they don't yet know, and using an experiential approach so that people discover that they are more alike than they previously thought, or they have more in common than they previously thought, or there's less need to feel antagonistic than they previously used to believe. And seeing people develop really good, robust relationships with each other, which is, again, an unfolding. It happens over time. And I take delight in people getting to the edges of their abilities with each other and learning how to have those conversations that they're probably quite hungry for, and wanting to know more about each other, but have maybe been a little bit shy or fearful or anxious about exploring a little bit more in the workplace. And again, if we do develop better relationships and connections in our workplaces, for those people who are interested in bottom line, well, that stuff improves bottom line. My interest is far greater than just bottom line. My interest is in humanity coming together, because I think some of the things that face us are pretty shocking. And if we don't get together and start working out how we can be allies with each other, we're going to just be stuck with these things that are beginning to deteriorate our quality of life.
We might spend an episode on that too, and we'll try not to rant too much during that episode, and try and keep it a little bit scientific.
Yeah,
because it's very easy to get drawn into a shouting competition.
Absolutely. As I get closer to 50, I'm finding it easier to rant a little bit less. Though although my passion is not diminished.
With me, I learn more and more and more, and the more I learn, the more upset I get.
Yeah.
Some of the things that we see, and that's also something that is about social business, and we might want to talk about that in the future too. The effect it'll have on people, and
that's right.
We reimagine work and make people, give them the ability to be happy at work. They are going to take that back home instead of the opposite.
Absolutely.
And I know from the past that I worked not too far away from home, only 70 kilometers, but it was like one of the busiest roads in the Netherlands, and it took me quite some time, stressful time to get home with traffic, and by the time you get home, you're just completely exhausted and done, and you don't want anything, and having an unsatisfactory job does not help with that.
No, it doesn't. No, and if you're like me, and I think you are, where you see connections between things, you'd be sitting in that traffic, and you start to see connections between the traffic and the environment, and unhappy work.
Listen to Radio 1 while you're in a traffic jam for an extended period.
Yeah.
And draw your own conclusions. And
that's right.
Yeah, things go on and on.
Yeah. So that's what dogs are for. Hey, you take them out for a nice walk.
Exactly. For me, I've been active. I left school very early, so I don't have a study of one form or another. I've had many jobs before I settled on a position in IT, where I started out working as a network engineer. And that sounds very nice, but what you do is you reset accounts of people on the network and email accounts and stuff like that. It's not very, for me anyway. And I learned very early on that the hardcore tech wasn't that interesting. I didn't care much for how IP packets are being built up and torn down again. So I started focusing on people earlier on, and created a situation where I was more mere the business consultant talking with business on the one hand and IT on the other hand, and translating what was said between them. That was interesting. From that, I went into content management and building platforms for people to communicate on, intranets, which we still have. Yeah. And from there, yeah.
When as you progressed in your career, when did you start to connect some dots and see the connection between, say, building intranets and
in hindsight, pretty early on, but in hindsight, we all have 20/20 vision, right?
Yes, yes.
By the time that I figured out the term social business and how all that came together, I was trying to figure out how to implement social media into a company, and how to integrate it, how to get people to talk like they do on social media, but have them communicate like that in a company. And while I was figuring that out, I was looking for information to educate myself, and I came across the term social business, and I read about what that entailed, and then it all clicked, and I was like, yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I want. That's what I was thinking about. And then I started thinking about what I had done all those years before, building intranets, training people to communicate, sharing information, building wikis, and all those kind of things. And so, but back then you could already imagine the necessity of people communicating with each other. One of the projects I did was a huge merger between two news outlet newspapers, and I made the intranet where all the information about the merger was shared, and
right throughout both businesses.
Yeah, for both businesses, they became one, and everybody had to know everything. So from all departments, all relevant departments, I had one person who would write news, and back then, obviously, you talk about a secretary getting thrusted into the mix because she's already typing, so you do it, and there's nobody designated to do that. There's no a communicator or those kind of people. So I had to train people from absolutely, no experience in anything related to intranets to being able to write content and react to people and see the news and share that. And you really get the importance of communicating within a company with the importance of the project that you're on. The more important it is, the bigger it is, the more you'll see the why, and that makes an impact, I must say.
I think that thing is absolutely connected. It's hard to separate them out. There's people seeing the why and seeing the bigger picture of what they're doing. And I think that's one of the things that people who were, for example, maybe solely focused on the technical side of social media in its broadest sense, Facebook, Twitter, blogs, probably could not have predicted that when people begin to be more connected and be involved in more conversations, they begin to connect dots and see how everything is linked up to everything else, when they start to see the bigger picture of their work. And I think that's part of the future of work as well, of people having more of a bigger picture of what they're doing, because people are hungry for meaning, and they've begun to glimpse the idea that we can have meaning in our work. It's not just a thing we do from 9 to 5, and it's not just a thing we do and become more social with each other, but actually it should be a source of some sort of joy and satisfaction and meaning in our lives as well. that is the thing I think people who are focused on solely the technical side could not have predicted, that people will begin to agitate for more meaning in work. They'll begin to agitate for something that has previously been absent in their working lives.
Yes. And we will try and to give as much information about those developments and try to connect the dots with every podcast. So the context for any, even if we just discuss a certain term, but there's always a certain context for it and the way that it connects with most people that work on the just work basically. Our aim for the length of the podcasts is a half an hour, 30 minutes. We're past that now.
Well, I was just actually thinking, we've said something about the name and begun to set the stage. We've said something about ourselves, and I was just thinking, as a kind of rounding up, we've used the expression connecting dots. If we just had a dot from today, I think we've kind of drawn that dot. We've said something about what we aim to do and who we are, and hopefully people have who listen have a bit of a flavor of how you and I relate to each other and the style of the podcasts.
Yes.
And I thought that it might be a good time to wrap up.
Yes. So consider this dot number 1. And it's curious to see what image will grow from all the dots that we put on the paper.
Yeah.
Okay. Until the next one then. Right?
Right.
Right. Thank you for listening, by the way.
Yes.
Because we hope there are going to be people listening, so thank you for listening, listeners.
Right. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your attention.
Yeah.
And like we mentioned earlier, we're still learning.
Yes, absolutely.
Until next time. This is Roger and John for the Reimagining Work podcast.